Welcome everyone, and thank you for being here today with all of us. I'm Valentina, and I'm really happy to welcome all of you and start this opening webinar of the fourth edition of the Young Professionals Forum Emerging Skills for Heritage Conservation, How Leadership, Strategy and Networking Operate on Preventive Conservation, a project of the CCR, Centro Conservazione e Restauro La Veneria Reale, together with the most important international institutions for the preservation of cultural heritage. Today, I will have the pleasure, together with my colleague Niccolò Akram Cappelletto, independent researcher in heritage studies, to moderate this event. This webinar aims to provide you an overview of the initiative and new opportunities reserved for students and young professionals in the field of heritage conservation and related disciplines. This year's forum consists in a series of online but also in-presence events and activities to improve participants' skills and expand their international networks. We planned a lot of activities like the interactive workshop, but also the expert meeting, the one-to-one meetings with our mentors and the senior professionals, and the final sharing event. But there are also different opportunities to apply for scholarships. You can find all the info online on our CCR Digital Lab, but I really want to spend a few words about these opportunities. First of all, IIC is supporting 10 scholarships to participate in the forum. IIC are particularly keen to support individuals in priority regions and emerging economies like Latin America and Caribbean, Africa, and Southeast Asia. These places will be open to students engaged in a university or a learning program for conservation, as well as early career practicing conservators currently engaged in a public or a private capacity. And next, we have scholarships sponsored by Amici della Reggia and the CCR, La Veneria Reale, available to graduates or undergraduates of the university degree in conservation of cultural heritage at the University of Turin and the Centro di Conservazione e Restauro La Veneria Reale. And then scholarships are also offered to Syrian young professionals under the Regione Piemonte Cooperation Project, Announcing Skills for Heritage Conservation 2022-2023 Piemonte Syrian Knowledge Exchange. Finally, I want also to say that there are also facilities for students, ICOM, IIC, ICOMOS and EG IIC members, but then I think it's time for some technical info, so you can freely use the chat for introduce yourself if you want, for a greeting, but also the Q&A section. We will collect all your curiosities, all your queries, and at the end of this event, we will have a dedicated moment to answer. Now, let's see together our program. Thank you, Fabio. And here the list of our speakers. Today we will have with us Sara Abram, Secretary General of the Centro Conservazione e Restauro La Veneria Reale, Alberto Garlandini, ICOM President from 2020-2022 and President of ICOM Foundation, Valerie Magar, ICOM Unit Manager Programs, Maria Teresa Iaquinta, ICOM Italia Secretary General, Sarah Stennage, IIC Executive Director, and Alessio Re, Fondazione Santagata for the Economics of Culture Secretary General. Now I leave the floor to Sara Abraham, Secretary General of the Centro Conservazione e Restauro La Venaria Reale. Please, Sara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valentina. Thank you very much. Hello everybody, and welcome. I'm really happy to give you a warm welcome to this edition of our forum, the 4th edition. And as you know, the forum is for us an international sharing platform which we designed together with some of the most prestigious international organizations for the preservation of cultural heritage. And thank you all for being here with us today. And the main objective of the forum is to enable easier access and positioning of cultural heritage professionals, above all thanks to the skills acquired and to the networks that we can be able to create also through our forum. And this year's forum will be focused on a particular theme. The theme of preventive conservation is a great topic that will be addressed in the various steps of this journey together with our partners. And the theme is complex, we know, but really challenging at the same time. Every partner will address the issue by focusing on a particular aspect of preventive conservation, from risk management to impact assessment, from sustainability to the creation of awareness, documentation, communication activities. As we know, preventive conservation is really similar to a way of management cultural heritage. So there are a lot of different aspects related to this topic. And this year, we also discussed how leadership, strategy, and networking skills operate on preventive conservation. Yes, because we have inherited these 3 beautiful keywords from the last edition of the forum, from the participant to the last edition of the forum. So we are happy to reflect today with all of you on the evolution of the same applied to the great theme of preventive conservation. And as you know, we give a particular value, a great value to soft skills for cultural heritage, as they are essential to best guide cultural organizations in dealing with complex and multidisciplinary issues like the one we are discussing in this edition of the forum. So the forum will be structured in a series of events and activities, as Valentina has already mentioned before. But today I would like to invite all of you young professionals from all over the world to join a new in-presence opportunity. For the first time, and I'm really glad about it, after the pandemic, our center is proud to host a group of participants for a final workshop. The final workshop is called Preservation Protocol for Collections in Historical Residences. And the workshop has been designed by our center, and here you will live a unique experience in the presence in one of the most important royal residences in Italy, here at the Regio of Venaria, from the 28th to the 30th of June, here in Venaria, near Torino, in Italy. And the activity will be structured in 3 parts, in 3 modules. After an introduction, an introductory session, the workshop will focus on several aspects and matters related to preventive conservation, such as international definitions, causes and risk analysis, climate monitoring, pest management programs. But in particular, all the participants will explore the relationship between container and content, so the relationship between buildings and collections. Also, thanks to a practical experience that we can have in the interior of interior and exterior spaces of the Reggia here in Venaria, the historical royal residence. The activity will end with a focus also on communication, and communication has a method also to spread the cultural preservation, and also about the socio-economical responsibility related to this important topic. So interested participants must provide a curriculum, a CV, and a motivation letter to apply for the call for training from the 9th to the 25th of May. And so they can win a fellowship which cover a large part of the costs related to the workshop in Italy. Then, in addition, let me point out that we will also award a fellowship sponsored by Piemonte region for a candidate coming from Syria, presenting a project, a specific project focusing on the protection of cultural heritage at risk in crisis areas. And so the dialogue between cultures and the identification of common grounds of exchange and growth are always fundamental for our Young Professionals Forum. So also in this new opportunity that we can give thanks to the region. And I truly believe in the potential of these experiences for young professionals, and I'm looking forward to meet you together with all our staff, all the colleagues of the Centro Conservazione Restauro, and all the team involved in the forum. And finally, please let me thank all the individuals, but also all the institutions that are helping us also in this year in building this new edition program, and in particular Regione Piemonte, Fondazione Compagnia di San Paolo, Fondazione Magnetto, IIC, and Associazione Amici della Reggia del Centro del Restauro, la Venaria Reale. And now it's really a pleasure to give the floor to Alberto Garlandini, a very dear friend of us and a colleague. Alberto, the floor is yours, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Sara. Now just let me share the slide. Is it okay? Okay. Well, dear young professionals, dear young colleagues, it is a great pleasure to be with you at the opening of this 2023 Young Professional Forum. ICOM has always been an active partner of the forum, and we share totally the goals of the forum. As a matter of fact, ICOM was founded in November 1946 in the aftermath of World War II, and facing the disaster and the ruins of World War II, few enlightened museum directors from 15 nations founded ICOM because they thought that museums and cultural heritage was essential to preserve the peace all over the world. At the beginning, ICOM was really just a small network of museum directors. But everything changed year by year. Now ICOM is a very large ONG made up of more than 40,000 professionals and museums from 140 countries. ICOM comprises 193 national, international committees, very different committees. Let's say we have 119 national committees, 32 international committees, 7 regional alliances, 22 affiliated organizations, and 13 working group and standing committees. And I would like to point out to you, I think it could be interesting for you, that the largest and the most active international committees of ICOM is ICOM CC, which is strictly dedicated on conservation. What ICOM does? ICOM sets professional, ethical, social standards, develops capacity building and training programs, promote global networks, promote cooperation, fights the illicit trafficking of cultural property, protects heritage in danger. But who are the members of ICOM? We have individual members, that is professionals, institutional members, that is museums, and also students. So my dear friends, you can join, if you want, you can join ICOM as young professional or as students, if you are still students. And if you are students, you will pay much less than the standard professionals. Well, ICOM mission is very complicated, but I just want to point out something that connects ICOM with the Young Professional Forum, with the Center of Conservation and Restoration in Venaria. The strategic plan of ICOM, approved 1 year ago, said that ICOM connect and represent museum professionals across the world and provide a network for sharing knowledge and practice. And of course, ICOM advocates at an international level for the role that museums play in conserving and promoting heritage, as well as in supporting peaceful, healthy, and sustainable communities. How does ICOM implement its mission? Well, first of all, let's say that ICOM organizes a lot of events, conferences, meetings, and so on. Before COVID, we usually had more than 300 conferences all over the world, in any countries of the world. They were mainly in-person events. Now, after the COVID, we have some of our events and conferences are organized and held in person, some only online, but the most part of them are organized in a hybrid form, meaning that we gather colleagues and professionals physically in person, but also online in the same event. And that is something very important, because it has increased incredibly the participation, the opportunities of colleagues and friends from all over the world to join our conferences and share the decision of our conferences. I don't want to waste time talking about our conferences and events. Just let me say that the most important are the general conferences that are held every 3 years. In 2019 was held in Kyoto, in 2022 in Prague. Just let me tell you that the greatest part of our events are open to also to non-members of ICOM. But of course, the members of ICOM may get grants, support for the participation. We were talking about the international standards of ICOM. Let's say that the most known international standards, it's the UNESCO 2015 recommendation on museums. It's a result of a great collaboration between UNESCO and ICOM, and the UNESCO recommendation considers ICOM Code of Ethics for museum, ICOM museum definition, and ICOM professional standards has the shared international references for the management and conservation of museum and on heritage. A few words about the most important document, the most important identity document of ICOM, which is the Code of Ethics for Museums. The code sets out principles accepted by the international museum community, but also by the international heritage community, and sets also minimum standards of conduct and performance to which professionals should conform to manage the heritage. And now it's been translated in 39 languages. It is interesting to say that the museum definition of ICOM is part of the Code of Ethics. And you may know that last year in August 2022, ICOM General Assembly in Prague approved the new definition of museums. That's interesting. It's a completely new definition, but just let me show briefly which is the new definition. The first sentence of the new definition contains the key terms that were already present in the previous definition. A museum is a not-for-profit permanent institution in the service of society that researches, collects, conserves, interprets, and exhibits tangible and intangible heritage. The second and third sentences include many innovative concepts. Museums are open to the public, which is an old key term, accessible and inclusive, and foster diversity and sustainability. Accessibility, inclusiveness, diversity and sustainability are new key concepts. And we have other key concepts in the third sentences. Museums operate and communicate ethically, professionally, and with the participation of communities, offering varied experiences for education, enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge sharing. That's after big discussion. ICOM thinks that this is the role of the museums in the 21st century. We, of course, I don't waste time saying that we have a very important yearly event, which is the ICOM International Museum Day, the week of the 18th of May. Museums all over the world plan creative events and activities related to the International Museum Day theme. And the theme of this year is museums, sustainability, and well-being. Of course, ICOM promote a lot of training initiative all over the world, and the most of them are related, of course, to the management of museums and to the conservation of cultural heritage. We have established an international training center for museum studies in Beijing that organizes training workshops every year with ICOM international experts. And let me tell you that thanks to specific ICOM grants, but also grants from other partners of ICOM, permit young professionals, mainly from developing countries in Africa, Asia, Pacific, and Latin America, to participate to these important training courses. The last two slides, this one is about the publications of ICOM. The most part of them can be acquired, downloaded, if are in the ebook format, downloaded for free for ICOM members. We have the ICOM newsletter, ICOM Voices, Museum International, the ICOM Academic Journal, publication of national and international committees, and many others volume. Well, let me finish. I know that after me, Valerie will talk for ICOM, so I'm very happy to talk about just a few words about a very important activity ICOM has decided to develop strongly in the next years. And these activities are related to the collections in storage. And these activities is developed in collaboration with ICOM. On September 2019, ICOM General Assembly adopted a resolution on measures to safeguard and enhance collections in storage throughout the world. The academic journal Museum International dedicated in 2021 an issue dedicated specifically on the collection in storage, and on 22, ICOM established a new working group on collection in storage. And I finish like this, saying that, of course, conservation is our main topic, our main activities, and certainly with ICOM and in the part of the International Forum dedicated to ICOM, we will face and discuss these things. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Alberto, for your enthusiastic and also energetic contribution. And now I leave the floor to Valérie Magar, ICOM International Center for the Study of the Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property Unit Manager Programs. Thank you, Alberto. Please, Valérie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Valentina, and thank you also to Alberto for his presentation. And now I will be sharing my presentation about some of the activities related with preventive conservation at ICOM. And one of the important things I want to mention before I jump into our theme is the nature of ICOM, just as Alberto explained the nature of ICOM. So ICOM was created at the UNESCO General Conference 10 years after ICOM was created. Because it was considered important to have an intergovernmental organization dedicated to technical aspects on conservation of cultural heritage. And the mission since the beginning was fairly broad, which was the study and dissemination of methods and materials in the field of conservation. So throughout the years, because it is an intergovernmental organization, the difference with ICOM is that it's a non-governmental organization where individuals are members. In this case, it's countries that are members. And we have 137 member states today, all of those that you see in darker color. So if you are in one of these countries, you can have access to ICOM activities and the things that we do. Now, conservation for a long time has been about the long term. It is about transmitting both the use, the capacity to enjoy heritage in the present, but also to make sure that we transmit it into the future and that future generations can enjoy it just as much as we did in our present time. So the ethics from the very beginning have been linked to the importance of doing no harm, to actually being able to enjoy heritage, but not necessarily altering it or altering it as little as possible. And as late as the 19th century, Camilo Boito, in his Charter of Conservation, mentioned the importance of favoring, he didn't use prevention at the time, but he was saying it better to conserve than to restore, and taking preventive measures to avoid doing treatments on cultural heritage so that their nature would not be changed. So prevention and preventive conservation later on has been at the very core of the ethics of what we do. It's what guides our principles, what we do. And it's also very linked to the beginnings of the history of ICOM. When ICOM was created in the aftermath of the Second World War, many lessons had been learned from both World War I and World War II in storing museum collections and objects in quarries or inside the subway, as in the case of the UK, for example, where part of the National Gallery and the museum collections were stored. And what they found out after having been in these very stable environments was that when those collections were returned to the museum storage areas or exhibition rooms, the objects were actually decaying much faster. So they soon understood that by controlling the climatic conditions and the environmental conditions in which the objects were presented or stored was of vital importance. And slowly, a series of recommendations issued and emerged on how those collection items should be preserved. Now, over time, it was understood that this was not necessarily a Bible that should be followed, that we needed to understand much better the nature of the places in which those collections were stored or exhibited, and that adequate solutions had to be found. So these led into the preventive conservation courses that were led at ICOM with the leading figure of Gaël Delichet, who is also behind that initiative on the collections in storage that Alberto mentioned just a few minutes ago. And so this has been very much, again, at the core of many of ICOM activities. But over time, it was understood that the many effects that could have an impact on cultural heritage objects were both these low and cumulative effects, including light and humidity, levels of humidity or dust or vibration or different elements that were slowly accumulating into the well-being, let's say, of the object. And there could also be immediate and drastic effects caused by earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, floods, much more serious matters. But they were both necessary. They both had to be taken into consideration in the longer equation of understanding how to care about cultural heritage. So over time, we have understood that our understanding of heritage has to become much broader. Of course, at the core of what conservators do is understanding heritage, its fabric or its structure, depending whether we are speaking about objects or immovable heritage. But we also need to understand in which environment it is located. And Sarah was speaking about these, the container and the contained object. So it's understanding the infrastructure, the resources that are available for that particular collection or that particular heritage. But it's also about understanding the social environment, whether there are religious practices that can influence also the decisions on conservation or uses different values to different groups of people. And also the impact nowadays with so many migrants around the world of how their own heritage is perceived or how they perceive the heritage in the new places that they inhabit. It's also about the human and built environment, so much broader impacts about the infrastructure and development, but also economic and political events that can be opportunities or constraints. And finally, also the natural environment, which influences where we live, how we live, and the many aspects of how our collections are actually evolving over time. Now we're in the recent years, and already since a few decades, we have seen that we're living in a much more fast world with many changing conditions caused by climatic change, but also by social unrest and war in different parts of the world. And also we're facing, for the last couple of decades, for the first time in human history, we are more people living in cities than in rural areas. And this has an impact on how heritage and how our collections are seen and perceived. There are potential threats to urban encroachment, to how our museums are also more affected by traffic or by different elements related with urbanization. But also it leads to new requests of the uses of some of those public areas, and these areas also being used by social protests, and we have seen the toppling of sculptures in many parks around the world and in many cities. So many questions about how do we face conservation in those circumstances, and what are the most appropriate conservation measures that we should be facing. So these are the broadest challenges that we are facing. And of course, this leads us to the fact that in order to be able to plan for conservation and to be able to anticipate as much as possible whatever threats or possibilities are out there to also make use of them, we need to have information. Information is clue to really understanding what is it that we care for and where is it located. Understanding why it is important, which are the different values associated to it or the different meanings that different groups attribute to those heritage places or collections or items. For whom is it important? So also identifying these different groups or stakeholders as they are called sometimes. And only once we have that set of information quite clearly established, can we decide how we are going to do a preventive conservation strategy or a more direct action in terms of conservation, when we have to act and where we have to act. And this leads me to some of the ICOM activities that we are undertaking at the moment. So we have, ICOM is mostly known for its capacity building activities. We do mostly training, but we also try to enhance communication and provide information to our member states. So one of our underlining themes in many of our activities is sustainability, acting so that all of our actions tend to not only enable heritage collections and heritage sites to be available in the future, but also that our actions are not damaging to the environment and that we use the least possible resources that we can, so that we also do not affect the environment. And one of these activities is our program called First Aid and Resilience in Times of Crisis, which emphasizes the importance of preventive conservation. So to be prepared before a crisis actually hits you, but should it hit you, then what are the actions that you have to be ready to undertake? And this includes promoting coordination among people dealing with heritage, but most importantly also with other sectors, including civil protection, sometimes the military. It can be different to the firefighters, many other groups that are not necessarily included in our planning schemes as we are learning conservation. So it's also about understanding how to speak with those other professions and how to be ready and prepared in case of a disaster or social conflict. And it's also about learning how to work with people. People will be there once something disaster strikes. They will be often the ones taking a leading role under the guidance of civil protection or of heritage professionals, but they can be an incredibly important resource. So it's also about empowering those communities and trying to learning how to work with them. Another important initiative is reorg, our method to reorganize museum storage that Alberto was mentioning. I mean, this was a method developed already a few years ago and has been implemented in different countries. And it's also about that unseen side of museum collections, all the items that are in storage that are usually not visible, not always fully recorded, for which we don't necessarily always have all the information and all the numbers. So it's about, first of all, having the catalog, but then also reorganizing it so that also those collections can be used, can be preserved, and can be properly cared for. And we also have another program called Our Collections Matter. This is a slightly shift into going beyond preventive conservation, but it's also looking at museums from a different lens and how museums are actually producing concrete examples into helping fight climate change and adapting ourselves to have a better future and much more sustainable actions. So there's a dedicated webpage to this project for anyone interested. And finally, one last program on which I will be speaking to you about. We have many other ones and some that are also regionally located and that have different strategies, and some also dedicated to the youth, which are extremely important. But I will speak about this program called World Heritage Leadership, which is also providing a really interesting approach, understanding that it's not just about World Heritage sites that are inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List, but it's about understanding their relationship with the broader landscape with their bigger context, because they're all actually interlinked. And it's also about understanding that we cannot divide culture and nature. I mean, they're both, we're together in this planet. It's our only planet. There's no planet B. We have to live with it, and it's actually beneficial to consider our policies together. So they're trying to integrate conservation and management approaches into single, with the specificities for each type of site, but trying to have the methodologies and the understanding in common. And also understanding that all of these places are inhabited by people, and that people have to be at the center of our care. And in this program, there's important elements of preventive conservation, and also shift into just understanding that we need to stop or mitigate change, or stop or mitigate decay from happening. Sometimes we cannot do that. It's also about understanding levels of change, and which levels of change can we actually accept and go with it, and which others can we actually try to fight or try to deviate or minimize the impact. So we have proactive disaster risk management as part of this program, and also proactive impact assessment. And this is the topic that we will be developing as part of the forum that we'll be following with the Aprile, to whom we are really grateful for inviting us again in this incredible program. And so we will be speaking about this guidance and toolkit for impact assessment, which was recently published. And as I mentioned, it's now a joint approach for all types of heritage. And we will be providing a small workshop and talk to be able to explain what are the steps that are involved with this impact assessment. But the main idea behind this is that when there's, for example, a large development project that is going to happen next to a museum, next to a site, next to an archive, let's say, it's not just about saying, well, we cannot do that project because this is heritage, and trying to say no and then hope that it will not happen. It's about trying to, at a very early stage, be involved in a conversation and try to find alternatives that are suitable, both for that development project, if it really has to be created, and solutions that are also acceptable for the heritage site. So to avoid dust or vibration to a heritage collection, or to avoid bigger projects such as the creation of a dam or other types of projects, or a road that might be built, and what can be the solutions, such as putting it further away, trying to minimize the size. I mean, there are different solutions that can be found, and this is a tool that actually guides you, and both the heritage professionals, but also the people who are promoting those development things. So in a nutshell, what we're trying to do and try to promote from ICOM is that conservation needs to be connected to the larger world, and our views about prevention and about preparedness are about us getting out of our shell, opening up to being able and ready to speak with other professions and with other sectors, and trying to connect conservation and impart the importance of our cultural heritage for everyone. And here are the ICOM website. All of our resources are downloadable for free, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Valerie, for your speech, and also for all very useful insights. And now I want to leave the floor to Maria Teresa Iaquinta, ICOM Italia, International Council of Museum and Sites Secretary General. Thank you. Thank you, Valerie.
Monument and sites. I don't want that Alberto Garlandini, I'm not going to take the place of ICOM. But is a monument and sites. In any case, just thank you, Valentina, and buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, good morning, good afternoon, and I would like to thank again the friends of, as all the others have done, all the colleagues and friends for the Conservation Restoration Center La Venaria for this opportunity, and have to pass to you the greetings of Maurizio Di Stefano, President of ICOM Italia, and the colleagues of the team, among them Christian Bigi, Daniele Spizzichino, Immacolata Lore, and also there will be Giada Borsetti. Will work with us for the forum. But I think I can now share my presentation. Okay, and I will try also to put in such a way that you can see it. Okay, sorry for that. I think that the theme that we choose for the seminar of this year put together the theme of prevention that was proposed already by the forum, with the International Day of Monument and Sites dedicated to the theme Heritage Changes. But first of all, also I would like to give you hints about ICOMOS. ICOMOS is a non-governmental organization, so we had ICOM non-governmental, ICROM intergovernmental. Again, we are getting back to a non-governmental organization. That means a worldwide network of experts that are articulated also in this case as ICOM in international scientific committees and also in national committees for some 1,100 experts in all world. And then the debate is on various themes, but the national committees and the international scientific committees, they are then reunited in the executive committee, and together with the international secretariat, they constitute the General Assembly of ICOMOS. ICOMOS Italy was actually created on the 9th May of 1974, and has activated all the national scientific committees, which are articulated in 6 main areas: knowledge, technology, materials, application, territories, communication, and evaluation. The International Committee has created, as indicated, declare a climate emergency, recognizing the potential of heritage to enable inclusive, transformative, just climate action through the protection of all heritage for the adverse climate impacts, implementing risk, and climate resilient development. The principle of participatory climate change climate governance, gender-sensitive human rights, and rights-based approaches that contribute to transformative changes are at the heart of this resolution, which also calls for solidarity with indigenous people, vulnerable and frontline communities. This built on ICROM 2000 report, The Future of Our Past, which urged the solidarity between heritage professionals and communities that will have the least resources to deal with the effect of climate change. Traditional cultural knowledge, heritage, and practices are proposed as a bridge between different ways of knowing, as embodiment of inherited knowledge accumulated over the generations, and as entry points for innovative and inclusive solutions to climate action in the recently published Global Agenda for Research and Action, which was co-sponsored by the International Council of Monument and Sites, the United Nations, the UNESCO, and the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. In order to do so, it is necessary to acknowledge, respect, and implement a variety of suggestions, both conventional and novel, that are rooted in the culture, heritage, and creative practices of people concerned. These aspects need to be part of the industry wide coordinated strategy for development. The key messages for this agenda are to effectively address climate change and new challenges. International relations between cultures must improve, that perspective and bodies of knowledge are of equal value in terms of their role, function, particularity, and contribution. The use of local knowledge in adaptation of planning and the inclusion of local communities in decision-making and policy development requires a deeper understanding of natural cultural approaches and heritage methodologies. Indigenous people and communities' knowledge system and practices needs to be integrated with existing knowledge and methods for the sustainable management of ecosystem, methods that are grounded in the local condition and needs, and that accounts for energy sustainability and climate adaptation requirements are necessary for a successful urban transformation. Methods for urban transformation that take into account energy sustainability and climate adaptation needs should be grounded in local conditions and necessities. Finally, determine the ways in which traditional knowledge and practices, especially those pertaining to land and water management, could aid in agricultural adaptation to climate change, thereby enhancing food security. How can the traditional knowledge inform innovative and transformative climate action? Consider the integrating traditional historic building conservation, adaptive reuse, and energy efficiency of historic building and landscape. Present the development of innovative infrastructure to showcase ways in which traditional knowledge, practices, and cultural heritage can be part of the solution. Capturing traditional philosophy and rationale in addressing the environment, land and water, and climate as manifested in vernacular built heritage and cultural landscape. How we want to develop this in our seminar? We would like really to propose a few questions that we are going to propose to those who will show interest in participating in our seminar. How can cultural heritage conservation drive climate action? What national level efforts should they support in response to climate change growing risk and impacts? How do local and traditional knowledge systems contribute to developing actionable climate adaptation and measure? How can local and traditional knowledge systems mitigate future climate changes, risk and impacts? How and under what condition can management be a tool for conservation and enhancement? We will try to circulate this questionnaire beforehand so that we can, the idea is to develop a sort of seminar together with the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Teresa, for your contribution. Really, thank you. I only want to remind, if you have any questions, any curiosities, please don't be shy and use our Q&A section to address curiosities to our speakers. And now I leave the floor to our Sarah Stanage, IIC, International Institute for Conservation of Historic and Artistic Works, Executive Director. Please, Sarah.
Thank you, Valentina, and hello to everybody joining online. We're delighted to be part of this next edition for the Young Professionals Forum. And yes, I think it's the fourth one now, so we're very excited for this year, particularly with the theme. I'm going to share my screen in a moment just to provide an overview of IIC for those who are joining online who have not come across IIC before, and like my colleagues before, obviously the international community for conservation is a really connected community, and we all work very closely together as partners. So it's been hopefully a really good introduction for those who are not familiar with the various professional bodies. So without further ado, hopefully you will be able to see my screen, and I'll just provide a brief history as well of IIC for those that are not familiar, as I say, with us. But our story began just after the Second World War in 1950. we were established as a learners' society, an independent body of professionals globally set up to support the evolution of what was quite a new profession at the time. We were founded by a group of men and women, incredible men and women following the Second World War, who had done some extraordinary things in terms of safeguarding historic and artistic works. They were involved in the establishment of IIC, and we know them as our founding fellows, but many of you may know them as the Monuments Men as well. And there's a particular film that had George Clooney in it, which is something I always remark on, but some of the facts in that film are true, some are not. But in terms of our purpose, we are very focused on those founding principles, and they resonate today in what we're trying to achieve and what we're committed to as a professional body, and those commitments as well with our members, and including students and early career professionals. We focus on education and learning, but we also have a number of other points to us as an organisation, including supporting groups internationally. And I'll introduce here on the screen 8 international regional groups. Many are based within Europe, but also further afield. And I'm pleased to say we are establishing new groups for Pan-Africa and also into Indonesia, which we're very excited about. And that will extend our reach now to over 5,000 professional members across the globe. We also, at the beginning of this year in January, launched our new strategy for IIC 2030. It is very much a strategy focused on the future, and the future of our sector, and change. A vision for change is very much the heart of the strategy and what we're trying to encourage over the next few years, because we know we have some quite significant challenges ahead of us as a profession. So we're trying to encourage that resilience and sustainability in everything we do and in every way that we work, including with our partners. So if part of the strategy, you will see a focus around leadership, which obviously speaks to the forum, but also on professional development and standards across the field and at all stages of your career as a professional. We support fellows who are very much at the heart of IIC, as well as emerging professionals, and as I've mentioned, our regional groups who are well established across the globe. We are also quite known for our publications, as well as our congresses and events, and I'll touch on some of those in this presentation, but also our international prizes and our grants and our awards, because through that we can really truly gain a level of recognition and value, and including with public engagement and how we support those social outcomes as well within conservation. So for IIC's publications, I have a few here just on the screen to share with you. Studies in Conservation is our main journal, which is published with Taylor and Francis, includes print and online. But we also have a free publication, which is News in Conservation, which we publish bi-monthly. And this is shared now globally, which is wonderful. It's really growing in readership. But we do have special issues in both News in Conservation and Studies in Conservation, whether that's focusing on philosophy and ethics or sustainability. There are various themes that are coming through every year. And I'm pleased to say that with our Congress for 2024, the focus again will be on sustainability, as we're seeing with the various initiatives through our partners as well with ICOM and ICOM CC. It's a really important focus within the field as we shift into that era of sustainability now. We also are working with our publishing partners on new initiatives to support access and fair access to publications and knowledge through routes like rapid publishing, which is a new initiative that we'll be releasing shortly with Routledge, Taylor and Francis. And of course, we support those who are just starting out and also through more informal writing, such as the Congress blogs. And we have a number of volunteers. I think IIC, we have over 120 volunteers who are involved with the Congress. So it's a huge undertaking, but we couldn't do it without students. And we have a range of opportunities to support student learning as well, and participation in our conferences and events. I mentioned the international prizes, and I just wanted to focus on one was a recent call from last year, which was a prize that we announced during the Congress in Wellington in 2022. And it was the Keck Award, which promotes public engagement of conservation. And it was a part of our workshop last year in the Young Professional Forum. And it was a wonderful way of really showcasing the importance of public engagement with conservation and just what that can generate within society. For the prize, we did promote a cash prize, and this last time we had a public vote element, and we were so pleased with that public participation. We had over 5,000 votes, so we'll be doing that again for Lima, and again we'll be hopefully being able to support that through the Young Professionals Forum, announcing that in the end of May, so do look out for that. But yeah, it's an incredible opportunity to provide that recognition into the conservation world. I mentioned engagement and membership, and these are just two events that we run the conferences. The student conference this year will be in Amsterdam. It'll be a hybrid event. We'll be supporting the regional group participation in that. And of course, it'll be focused on students and early career professionals. We're delighted actually that the students actually run the conference. So that really helps with the IIC team, but the students do an amazing job. Really, truly, we learn every time from the students. They bring such fresh thinking, and it's just an amazing way to be involved actually in the organisation of something like a conference. And again, I hope valuable learning experience on how it all works. For the Congress in 2024, again, that will be a hybrid event, and we are really looking forward to that one. We'll have, again, lots of participation online through the regional live hubs, but also in-person presence in Lima. We will again have a very strong focus for students. So we'll be running a student poster session, and we'll have a committee set up to support that with mentoring, etc. So there's lots to look out for, and hopefully we can support you from IIC in taking those first steps in attending conferences and also contributing to conferences through papers and posters. I also just wanted to mention one of our new programs, which is again focusing on leadership. We launched this at the Congress last year, the ADAPT program, which is funded by the Getty Foundation. This is supporting 30 emerging leaders from underrepresented regions, and so that everybody's taking part online as well as part of an extended program that lasts for 9 months. We're supporting I think some great people, so please check them out on the IIC website. But what I do want to mention on this sort of particular point of the programme is the opportunity, I think, to showcase different perspectives and different points is critical within the profession, and everybody can learn from each other. And I think that shared learning, I think, is really embraced through these sorts of programmes. And I'm so heartened to see our other partners as well, whether that's ICOM or ICOM, also running these programmes. And I think when we start to join these programmes together and the collaboration, some really special things can happen. So again, I'm just really highly delighted that we can work with our partners on this. The climate action and sustainability focus has again become extremely topical, as I've mentioned, and we were very pleased to work with both ICOM and ICOM CC in releasing a joint declaration in 2021, and that has remained in focus for us all, and particularly as we start to work together on various initiatives, whether that's Our Collections Matter, which ICOM are hosting, which is a wonderful programme, and I would absolutely commend everybody to have a look at that, as well as with ICOM CC around the Solidarity Project. Really, really strong programmes to have a look at. We have for this year as well an initiative I'm hoping to work through with ICOM CC and ICROM on the Race to Zero partnership campaign with the UN. Again, this is just to make sure that our sector is represented on that global stage through the COP, the climate conferences that happen every year, but also in making sure that as a sector, we are working towards those goals and those targets, and making sure sustainability is really built into everything we do as a profession. So we're very much committed to doing that. And I'm pleased that the interactive workshop that IIC will be hosting as part of the Young Professionals programme this year will be focusing on the environmental guidelines. We released the 2014 declaration on the environmental guidelines with ICOM CC. So we're nearly 10 years on from then, and I think the world is a very different place, certainly post-pandemic. So we think it's a useful time to focus again on the guidelines, to explore them in more detail, but also to look at the debate as it is now, and particularly this new era of sustainability, so that we can also speak with the students and early career professionals as part of that interactive workshop, because again, we're very keen to hear the experiences and the perspectives of those taking part and representing regions globally. So we're very excited to be hosting that at the end of May. So I'll stop my screen sharing there. Yes, I think I finished a little bit early, so hopefully that's helping with time, but my thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Sarah. And really, thank you for your passionate contribution, really. And now, last but surely not least, our Alessio Re, Fondazione Santagata for the Economics of Culture, Secretary General. Please, Alessio, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thanks a lot, Valentina. When spring comes, there is this recurrent, by now, meeting with the opening of the Young Professional Forum, which I like a lot, thanks to all the staff of the Conservation and Restoration Center of La Venaria Reale for always inviting us to this. I represent here one of the partners of this initiative, which is the Santagata Foundation for the Economics of Culture. Our work is, we used to use a claim, which is culture counts. We really believe that there is room and there is need as well for cultural heritage to play a role for our society. So that's in a nutshell our job. We have a number of initiatives. We work a lot, for instance, on the question of management of cultural heritage as a resource. We work a lot for UNESCO and with UNESCO. One of our main field of work are preparing management plans for World Heritage properties. We are currently working on a number of them, both in Italy, let's say Pompeii, as to mention just one of them, and in other countries as well. We also work and try to transfer the knowledge through training programs. We work a lot with the Conservation Center of La Venaria Reale, which is one of the most important partners of us. We have a special program, joint program with them, which is titled Heritage Lab. I'm just mentioning this in very short terms as to raise possibly some curiosity from you about our work. And we have a website on which you can eventually dig all the possible informations about our work. But I'd like to spend these few minutes with you to propose some reflections, which are really the purpose why we really are committed to join and support initiatives like the Young Professional Forum. And let me mention a few keywords. So the first keyword I'd like to start with is change, because we all know that we live in an era of profound changes from the social point of view, from the environmental point of view, technological, demographic. And these changes are not something abstract and detached from our life. They affect our life, our ways of living. And what does it mean? It means that this push us to update our knowledge, our references, our language, and possibly to do it quite rapidly, quite quickly. And this is a question which concerns also all the professions related to, even to culture, in all its diverse expressions. So in this scenario, it becomes extremely important, probably more than ever, that all those professionals working in the culture sector to understand, to be able to understand these dynamics which are in progress, and to possibly identify and address possible solutions through innovation. The Young Professional Forum, it is an initiative targeted on the future of the profession of people working in conservation and restoration. So the second keyword is this one, is profession. We are talking about something very concrete, very real. So the restoration profession requires, to my advice, to acquire awareness and skills on many issues, much beyond the scientific ones. And the professional figure of the restorer is increasingly called, even by the competition, to equip themselves with multidisciplinary, transsectoral skills, to dialogue with other professionals, to dialogue with a multitude of actors, to move into international context, to use technologically advanced tools, instruments. So this forum is certainly a very good occasion for this, as it is explicitly aimed at working on the future professionals of restoration. So this is, if I remember well, the fourth edition of the forum. And the experience that we conducted with the previous editions, I was lucky enough to take part to all of them, really allowed already to draw some balance, which are quite significant, and to collect inputs towards the path, the need, the questions of innovations, and to face the challenges which are posed by several changes and by evolving markets of the profession. So I really believe that continuing to work on this through the forum, and especially trying to build a community, an international community of expertise, is something that we are all in need for. And let me mention a last keyword, which is related to peace. I don't want to be rhetorical. I don't totally like to be rhetorical, but today, working on culture, it's evidently related more than ever, probably, or more than in other circumstances, to the work that we need to do for peace, for recovery, for improving the quality of life of people. As foundation in 2019, we started a program together with the University of Torino, which is targeted on the protection of cultural property. In 2020, we started a program which is titled Heritage Beyond Walls, which is targeted on providing voice and access to knowledge to students in cultural heritage disciplines coming from Syria. In 2022, we made within this Young Professional Forum a workshop which was dedicated to Palmyra last year. And this year, since we know that all these are like drops in the sea, but we want to provide continuity to this effort, even this year we are going to propose within the scope of the Young Professional Forum a workshop managed by us, which is titled Cultural Heritage in Syria, Protection, Conservation, and Recovery. Recovery is something that regards the life of each of us. And I'm really, let me say, proud to have the possibility to have another occasion to talk about this and learn about these topics also within the context of the event organized by the Venaria Reale. It is also something that probably has been mentioned already, but for people, persons, professionals, young professionals coming from Syria in particular, the access to this forum is granted for free for quite obvious reasons. And this is something that I really personally appreciate, and I believe that it is a very good occasion for pushing not just Syrian students, but all of us to learn and understand better what we can do. Very last information, if I have 1 minute more, standing on this topic, which to me, again, is central for our professions today. So the role of cultural heritage for creating room for peace and for recovery and for human development. I'm also happy to anticipate that tomorrow we are launching another initiative in partnership with ICOM, which is one of the other partners. I see Valerie here connected of this event, a new initiative on post-conflict recovery. So it's like an anticipation. Tomorrow we will have the news about it. So let me say again, thank you for allowing me to take part to this event. I'm very happy. We are all very committed. All our colleagues, my colleagues, are very committed, and certainly you can count on our support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alessio. And we are really happy and proud to have Santagata Foundation for this here again. And now to sum up, I asked to my colleague Diana to please share the slide with the details of the interactive workshops we planned between May and June. Okay, here. Perfect. Thank you, Diana. And here you can find the list of our interactive workshop, and as our speakers highlighted in their presentations, there are there are different areas related on heritage conservation, and with this program we would like to give you an overview, but also an in-depth knowledge about different aspects related on preventive conservation. So thank you again, and now I'm really happy to leave the floor to my dear colleague Niccolò Akram Capelletto, independent researcher in heritage studies, who moderates our Q&A section. Please, Niccolò, thank you.
Thank you so much, Valentina. Hi, everyone. I am Niccolò, and I'm extremely happy to be here as a former participant of the forum last year as well, which was an incredible experience. And something that I will definitely remember for forever, I would say, for all the different, like, it's an experience that kept on giving, as you can see that I'm here now this year. So really, it was an incredible experience. And I was asked by Valentina to moderate the Q&A. So I would like to ask the first question to all our dear panelists here today. And it is, what do you think are the fundamental skills for a young cultural heritage professional today and tomorrow? Please, who wants to start? Otherwise, I'll just pick one. Thank you.
Oh, yes, please, Valerie.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think my answer would be a combination of skills. I think we still very much appreciate and understand the importance of really knowing the core of what we do in terms of conservation. So really getting to know the ethics and the practice of conservation is extremely important. But in terms of new items, I would say the ability to be able to communicate and to communicate with different audiences, whether they are the broader audience, the public, engage communities or other sectors. I think that is a key skill that we definitely need to acquire.
Thank you. Next. Alessio, you want to go?
Yes, that's a very good question to open this discussion. And I have no doubts on the answer, because I can measure, of course, this is based on my work, on our work. Since culture and cultural heritage role to me is for the people, for the society, is for development, is for creating room for peace. These are extremely challenging issues to tackle, extremely. The reality is that we cannot really work alone on them. So measuring your question on my work, certainly the most important skill, which aside the technical ones, is the capacity of creating connections, is networking for real. We cannot think to tackle any of these challenges alone. We cannot even think to acquire by ourselves as individuals all the competencies or the skills or the knowledge. Building connections, creating networking means having more possibilities to have access to knowledge, to information, to culture. We live in the knowledge society without, and this is really our most important resource, knowledge. And we cannot do it alone. So networking.
Thank you. Maria Teresa?
Thank you. I think I have just to complete the competencies. As you know, in the G20 in 2021, there was really a section related to the new competencies. We have been already mentioning the interdisciplinarity, the networking. I would say that also there is another topic that is beyond the specific competencies, is the digital capacity, because this is something that we have been experiencing, particularly in these last 3 years. And that was mentioned more and more in that. This means that there are also other capacities that are related to what Alessio was saying, networking, capacity really to team working. And that is something that is very important. So whatever, certainly the basic capacities, the architect is still an architect, the conservator is still a conservator, the engineer is still an engineer, but all of them, they need to have the capacity to work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sarah, please.
Thank you. I would just add to that. We've touched on it already in terms of leadership, but leading change and advocacy in terms of advocating for change, I think that's becoming increasingly more important for students and early career professionals to also step into that. And leadership cannot start too early. So that's something I would very much support for young professionals to really think about. And hopefully that'll come through as well into the interactive workshops and to support students on that as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And the other Sarah?
Thank you, Nicola, for your questions. And I agree with all the colleagues that are speaking. And I want to add only a particular perspective about what they said. In my opinion, it's really important to be able to listen to the needs of people. Because also when we are in a network, also when we speak one to each other, it's really important to share our competencies and our abilities. But if you don't understand the real needs of the community in which you are, it's really difficult to be useful to the preservation of our cultural heritage and in the way that is possible in this particular moment and particular place. The people like Alessio, Maria Teresa, Valerie, they work also in very difficult countries with a lot of critical situations. And in that moment, even if we would like to do everything and to give all our experiences and competencies at their disposals, sometimes there are only few things that we can do. And it is really important to understand which are the priorities and give space and opportunities to these priorities.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, and thank you all. And now we have a question from the participants. It says, will it be possible to be helped in raising funds for a conservation plan project? I guess this is for everyone, but if someone has already an answer or some thoughts on it, please let me know. Alessio, please.
The answer stands pretty much. Okay, the question is very good. It's very proper. And the answer stands pretty much on what Sarah Abram was just saying. We need to attach the role of cultural heritage, including the profession for the conservation of cultural heritage. We need to attach it to the needs of the people. We can't pretend, now it is evident to anybody, we can't really pretend to detach cultural heritage, any kind of cultural heritage, to the society. Unless we continue to do it, it would be very hard to find money enough, because there is no money enough for conserving all cultural heritage in the world. But the key point is attaching, working on cultural heritage, being aware that it has a role, it must be have a role for the society. And for doing this, we need to start by understanding the needs of the people. Cultural heritage is made by the people, and it is for the people. It does not exist without the people. So then, of course, it is not a technical answer, mine. There are many technicalities on this, but this is really the core approach.
Thank you so much for that. Anyone else who would like to respond? Maria Teresa, please.
I would like to add to what rightly said Alessio, that certainly the different project needs to be considered, and we have to be able to make in such a way to organize a project that is attracting and is important also for the communities. Only in that case we can also find the possibility that this project as a respond to a priority of the community, and so that is worthwhile to be funded. So that is what is our side. I mean, naturally we are not raising funds community. We are just a technical community, but what is our experience is that when there is a good project, there is a very possibility to be funded. And if we are going to talk about it, and if we are going to talk how what Alessia was saying, if we can attract the interest of the communities, then will be possible, and to also to rearrange the project in such a way that could be realized. More than funded, I would say, the real question is possible to realize a project? It depends on the capacity of listen, as Sarah was saying, and also to understand the needs.
Thank you so much. Anyone else who has a thought? No. I think those were great answers, and also I think goes back to the point of networking that Alessio, but also it was coming in several presentations about being able to find the right person who could help you, and that person is connected to a community and all of that. Like all of those are difficult, things, skills to gain, but once you get there, they become extremely useful. I have another question for you all, and it is, what are the biggest challenges for cultural heritage institutions, since you all represent institutions, regarding communities, which really ties with Sarah's response, Sarah Abram's response earlier about focusing on that, and that should be the starting point and the focus. So if you all want to expand on this, since you also touched upon it, if anyone wants to start.
I'm starting myself.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no.
Okay, sure.
No, it's Valerie.
Okay, Valerie, please.
Okay, I didn't want to go first because I went first last time, but thank you very much. I think for us, this issue about communities is extremely important, and it conveys a broad aspect of what communities are and who they are. The most important challenge, I would say, is probably terminology and language. Something that, I mean, and by language, it doesn't necessarily mean speaking a different language, although as an international organization, we often do have that we will not necessarily speak the local language. But it's also about, yes, which are the terms that we're using to express and convey what we think is important about heritage, and then also understanding from the community what they feel is important and what they understand about heritage. And unless there's a very clear concept of the terms that are chosen and the time that is allocated to also communicate and to build trust and to really get to understand each other, there's lots of possibilities for misunderstandings or not getting the full picture or not fully understanding what each of the sides wants. So it is about dedicating enough time to build those relationships, to understanding also the glossary, let's say, that has to be used to reach an understanding, and which will be specific to each project or to each site or each community. And very importantly, I think for us also the challenge is to include different types of communities. There are some that are very logically implicated with some heritage collections or some heritage sites. But for us, I mean, we also feel that it is extremely important, and this is why we're so happy to be in this forum, to really include the youth, all types of youth, not just those who are studying conservation or are interested about heritage, but others that might not feel necessarily as linked to heritage, or they feel that museums are far, far away and in a distant galaxy, and that is untouchable and not always very understandable. So also trying to shift that perception that heritage plays an incredibly important role in our lives. I think we all saw it during the COVID, when we actually couldn't be at those heritage places and we could only access it virtually. But how can that be shifted both in our minds as conservation professionals, and also being much more inclusive in opening spaces where the young people can also express themselves, share their ideas, innovate in a way, and that we are also receptive of those ideas and those possibilities for all of those people to be fully involved. And for us, it was a sort of a paradigmatic shift where we were caring about heritage because we were told that heritage was our goal and our aim as conservators or as conservation professionals, to real understanding that it's about both people and heritage. And it's where we work for people, for those communities, and that's where heritage keeps its full meaning.
Thank you so much. There were two more hands. Let's go with Maria Teresa, please.
Just I was basing my presentation, although it was not really so clear because I was a little bit emotive, was nervous this time. But I would say that the International Day of Monument and Sites this time is on heritage changes. And this is related really to traditional cultural knowledge, to communities, and also to practices that are proposed as a bridge between different way of knowing. And this includes communities. So the collaboration, the attention to the needs, as Alessia was saying before, is really related to communities and to local knowledge, and that is so important. I mean, and I would say that, as Valerie was saying, the attention also to youth and to their capacity to interpret this kind of knowledge is sort of important. That's why we all are so excited to participate to this forum. I hope that we will develop this idea, and that at the end we are able also to develop some recommendation that it is my will be my duty, because to inform also the ICOM International, because this is under this, our seminar is under the ICOM International sponsorship.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Alessio, do you want the floor?
Yes, for proposing a little reflection, because, okay, I totally share the relevance to youth. I totally share the question of languages. But let me take the question not only from the community point of view. Community is something important, something extremely important. It is something not given by default. We always need to build communities. We are used to it, but sometimes, you know, I have the impression that talking about communities is like talking about, I don't know, sustainability. Without attributes, we really don't understand what it is, and could have a very different meanings to all of us, even divisive meanings. In certain contexts, talking about communities could have like critical meanings. But let me propose a few reflections about the institutional side, because your question was about institutions and communities. And to my experience in recent years, a lot of organizations, institutional organizations, approached us, and the point from them was always, we don't have money enough, we don't have enough staff, always, no exceptions. While I tend to believe that the real points, since there would never be money enough and there would never be staff enough, the real points to work on as cultural professionals would probably be on the effectiveness of the management of the organizations, on the skills, on developing skills, which is not just getting new competencies, new skills. We have, I see in institutions, people with very important, very relevant capacities, very skilled, but probably not updated, not developed to face the evolving world. And the last keyword I'd like to mention is this one, is about strategies. Institutions must follow strategies if they want to be really able to detect the challenges that we are facing. Because even if you have a very well-established organization with a lot of partners, with very skilled people, without a precise mission, a precise strategy, we risk to lose our effort. So this is my point of view based on my personal experience, but I think this is pretty important as well.
Thank you so much for this thought. Sarah Stanage, Sarah Abram, do you want to add anything?
I would just touch on shared decision making and moving towards that with communities. And I will actually signpost a brilliant publication by ICOM on shared decision making within conservation practice. So I would commend that as well to you. But I think that's something we aspire to, certainly as an organisation. It's very difficult to define community sometimes, but as we're touching on as well, but it's important that we move towards that in terms of achievement.
Thank you so much. Okay, if there aren't any other questions from our audience, I'll give you just another couple of seconds. Otherwise, I move forward to thank you all panelists for your presentations and your just availability to speak truthfully to what you're doing and how you're doing it. I think that's very informative and educational per se. So thank you all for that. And I think we now have a short video to show you all, if Valentina is, if I'm correct. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And see you soon at the Young Professional Forum.
Thank you all. See you soon. Bye.